it's a directional mic. It's just like little things like that. I find help.
That's cool. You have a portable mic too. Like we bring all this. We are carrying like all these like fucking mics and mixers around with us all the time.
Yeah, like blue mics and laptops and all that. Yeah, it can be heavy.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, but also like I view podcasts as like your production value can only get better.
Yeah, exactly.
So I purposely keep the production value as simple and editing process simple as possible because this is just something I do for fun with spare time at conferences.
Yeah. And if anything, I think that's kind of a good thing because I mean, if you take it too seriously, you can kind of go over your head.
Yeah, and it's a good way of meeting people. I find like it's a good. You cool to start?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. What's your name and what's your podcast?
My name is Spencer. I'm part of the Landport. We're a podcast based on discussion of games, gaming news. We've done about 3 episodes so far, so we're relatively new. The past 2 and 3 have mostly dived into unionization in the gaming industry, labor in the gaming industry, as well as various tech news. We were discussing HoloLens, and there's a very interesting controversy surrounding that with the workers building the HoloLens saying they don't want their technology that they're building to be used for warfare, which is apparently what Microsoft was interested in employing the HoloLens for, to helping improve soldiers' aim, visibility in combat, etc., etc. So, and
I guess that's an interesting ethical thing because there are pens that sign declarations of war.
Yeah, exactly.
And I bet the pen makers probably didn't want that.
Yeah, precisely. No, and I mean, there's a whole discussion we had there, which I think that opens up to about the connections that I think most notably the ways that gaming is tied to our lives on a deeper level. I think one of the worst things I hear all the time that I hate so much is hearing keep politics out of games. But to me, it's impossible because politics are not like this separate thing that you can walk in and out of. They are literally they're the amalgamation and the cumulative end result of like all of our decisions and our opinions and our beliefs, and that comes into both the politics and or the governments that we live under, but also our entertainment, our media, and including video games. And one of the things that I brought up was if you play Black Ops now, retrospectively, I played it when I was in middle school. So I was a 7th grader, and it just felt like a normal shooting game to me. When I go back and I play now, I'm like, so much of this is just war crime after war crime and, controversy after controversy. These are things that, the U.S. has intentionally hidden and tried to, bury historically that now is a thing you can do in a video game. And it plays out exactly like Cold War propaganda I would expect to play out. But it's to me like politics are a part of video games, and being apolitical in itself is a choice. So by choosing to make your game not about politics, a la like Far Cry 5, which pretended to engage in these things, you ultimately take the stance of kind of letting a certain side be louder,
And also I think it's I view that there's that art's made by people. People are by default political, whether they're apolitical or whatever side they're on.
Yeah, we try to alienate ourselves from politics as being a separate thing, but it isn't. It's just a part of us, Yeah. Yeah, it's I
think certain genres like shooters
that
take place with real guns, there is a certain amount of politics behind that, especially if it's a war game. There's a certain amount of stuff like that.
Medal of Honor Warfighter, there was a controversy where, I can't give you all the details right now because a lot of it has slipped my mind, but where it was like by playing the game and using certain guns in the game, you were using, because they had actual, I think, licenses from the gun companies, you were sort of helping, or there was sort of, you were bringing attention or doing something with, it was benefiting the gun companies in some way, basically, because the licenses for those guns existed in the game, or the game was allowed to legally use their names. So it was not only free advertisement, but if there was something else going on, I can't remember, but it's things like that. You are thereby promoting, by allowing these people, people who produce things with the war industry, you could say, or the industrial complex, you're kind of by allowing them to have their games having a platform in your game, or their guns having a platform in your game, you're sort of promoting that. And that's sort of what Black Ops was. I don't know if the developers of the game intentionally meant to glorify Cold War atrocities and war crimes. And by that I mean you're all this stuff happening in the game related to, say, I think one of the big things is in the game you're literally helping kill Russia's nuclear science program, but by doing that you're also protecting yours, which historically was made up by Nazis brought over from Germany to help America's rocket program. But in the game you were unintentionally helping America house Nazis by doing that, by killing the people who were, and not just housing them, but also having them have a successful rocket program by doing that, which was only there to aid America's influence over the rest of the world and, diplomacy, especially in South America. One of the more gross things is when you get to Black Ops 2, there's so much controversy surrounding American-supported far-right coups throughout history. That game, so much of it is you helping support a far-right coup in South America by you taking part in special ops missions against various South American governments that historically were destroyed by American-backed coups. And they play it off as though, like, oh, it's just this normal thing. They don't really, depict it in sort of the really horrifying way that it was. Controversial way that it was. They depict it like it's heroic, like it's cool. The only time a bad thing happens, the main characters feel bad for it, like they repent it, like it's a thing that doesn't really happen. But you look at how many human rights violations occurred under U.S. policies in the Cold War, you will find it was rampant. And for the game to mask that, and through having a tear-shedding moment, just is completely, I think, disingenuous to how not only our government but the people partaking in these events actually felt about it. It wasn't a random thing that happened every now and then. These were actual, these were systematic. These occurred and were planned, and not always planned out, but also were largely the result of the U.S. trying to topple governments. There was that whole thing with Elliot Abrams recently, with Ilhan Omar confronting him about the massacre that happened back in the 80s that occurred under Elliot Abrams' watch, and that wasn't a thing that I don't think Elliot Abrams felt bad about. They did everything to bury that. So, yeah, was.
Do you think shooters?
Sorry, that was a huge stream of consciousness.
Yeah, this is what random, not even random, but just tangents.
Yeah.
What this podcast is built on.
Oh my God, yeah.
So, yeah, but one last question about that. I do want to go back to the Game Workers Unite stuff.
Oh, of course, absolutely.
Do you think? Because I don't know. I almost think of shooters. Every shooter I play, I turn off the political side because I view the shooters as when I think of the core shooter audience, I don't think they really are looking for a political.
No, they aren't.
And traditionally, in most in most war movies, there's limited. If it's a bombastic war movie, there's limited stuff about that, and it's more about the story of the troops and the strategic stuff and all that stuff. So I almost wonder if it's a cursed genre because by doing a war game, that war is maybe the most political, geopolitical worldwide thing, right? But it's the audience that maybe doesn't even care, and then they don't want to. It was cool. Spec Ops: The Line.
I love that game so
it's cool that they did that.
Yeah,
but it would be. I could not fathom something like
AAA,
Call of Duty or Battlefield.
Worlds at War was the closest we really got to that.
Yeah,
I think.
And they try and do some stuff, but it's mostly what if it happened to us? It's normally they're tricking the hat.
Oh, of course, yeah. And I appreciated the fact that Advanced Warfare had some anti-PMC stance, but it doesn't change the fact that they also did work with I forget what's his name. He was some high-up guy during the Cold War responsible for parts of our foreign policy in South American countries, helped them with Black Ops 2. It was one of the guys that was partly responsible for the coups that took place there in some of the countries at the time. And so it was kind of they have a guy who has, he has say over the depiction of these events and how they're shown in this game and how they're distributed to an audience. And obviously it's going to be biased towards what we were doing, and it's going to be biased towards deflecting from how horrible those things actually were, and I think that's kind of how it played out. But that was just me kind of going on about I guess it's sort of hypocritical of them in a little way to go on about PMCs are bad and then also support other kind of war criminals and stuff. But if that's, I don't know if that's a strong word to use in this context, but
it's a.
I hope it doesn't sound that way.
Well, it's all. Also, it's. Yeah. It's. I also, whenever I come to these shows, as a Canadian.
Oh yeah. I didn't realize you're from Canada. Sorry,
most of the teams from Canada.
Okay. That's cool.
Some of the remote people in America, but it is kind of each country has their own
history,
kind of views on those things and whether they're involved in different. Every country's probably got something they're not proud of.
Yeah.
So yeah, it always seems and U.S. being the largest gaming market,
but also
for a lot of traditional genres, it's kind of it's a weird.
Oh, of course,
it's a weird kind of paradigm.
That's why I'm very interested in games outside the U.S. because especially when it comes to historical events, because when it comes to World War II games, people are being like, let's have D-Day for like the 15th millionth time. And it's like, I'd rather see something like South Asia or Poland or China, one of these other fronts we've never seen before that's been sort of alienated through like Western media and, through Hollywood films. But to answer your question that you were asking about, can like shooters handle these properly? I think they can. I think Wolfenstein, for example, is the new Wolfenstein games. I mean,
in a
well, I mean, like,
it's
it's
like almost bombastic political.
Oh no, it's very bombastic.
Yeah,
it's very, and the Nazis are very cartoonish to some extent in that game. Although I think it was very bold of them to have a mission taking place in a concentration camp.
Yeah,
and especially given it's like it kind of brings you back to like in that setting. And like the Wolfenstein games, they've always been sort of about these bombastic Nazi operations, like the supernatural and like super soldiers, and it's all very ludicrous and very over the top. And then you have this one scene where it's like it's kind of the idea of like the Nazis taking the world, it's like a very like sort of ridiculous idea, and one would think that, and then you have this mission where it's like this is kind of the reality of if they actually did. This isn't just some cartoon fantasy. There are actual concentration camps,
and also kind of like the going back to the 70s, like almost the 60s, 70s, like making fun of Hitler.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
that was weird. Like that
seeing
was
old Hitler was very strange.
That's that like is a political statement, but kind of like it's not something that's very like. Parody of that stuff is kind of not as common now, so it's really interesting to see that.
Oh yeah, but I think the very interesting thing is like also the context of like with politics in a shooter. I think it's also like who are you shooting at, and it's things like Wolfenstein. It's like they spend the whole game you're brutalizing Nazi soldiers, and it's like I don't think anyone's against the idea of like Nazis being dead.
I also remember playing Blood Rain as a teenager, my mom walking in and going like, "What is this? This is really violent." And I went, "Mom, they're Nazis." And she was like, "Okay,
oh, okay,
cool."
Yeah, exactly.
And then I was able to play Blood Rain before I was like old enough to buy it.
Yeah, that is in a way a political statement because it's saying it's like Wolfenstein is saying this violence should be inflicted on people with like or Nazis like this, whereas like, and then Call of Duty. That violence is being inflicted on a country that you're invading in supporting a far-right coup in, and so which means that you're sort of in the game unintentionally aiding or not even unintentionally, like intentionally aiding the United States and what they're doing, and so and people I don't always think about those things, like in the game, like the broader context of like what you're actually doing and why you're there, and it's like, yes, there are moments of individual morality between soldiers, the whole idea of like them being there fighting not for a country but for each other. But at the same time, it's like their efforts still, in some way, contribute to the victory of one side. Which is why I think people have talked forever about a German World War II campaign, and it's like I would be interested in that, but I just think, how do you do that without unintentionally glorifying the Third Reich, or how do you do that with unintentionally, because either you're going to have the main character confront the war crimes of what they're doing, which almost, statistically, most German soldiers, took part in the Holocaust, and especially in the Eastern Front. And so it's like, if you're one of those guys, how do you tell a story about being the one guy, and also trying to keep it, like authentic to the setting itself. But, I don't think a lot of people think about it that way. I think some people just really want a campaign where you can play as a Nazi soldier, and they don't want to have to deal with the whole, like, confronting the morality.
That'll go over well on Twitter.
Oh yeah,
that'll be. I wouldn't say that's a good idea at this point.
No, it wouldn't be. It would be terrible. And I think because I think you can have the campaign where it's like in Star Wars Battlefront 2, it's like, oh, we're the bad guys actually. What we're doing is wrong.
And also when you don't set it in the real world,
you're
like, hey, you want to make a not political game, or you want to try and make it as apolitical as possible?
Yeah.
Don't set it in real
Don't
real
set
world.
it. Yeah, exactly. Do what The Witcher 3 did, and have like racism done against like magical creatures instead of like actual people. If you're too afraid of confronting that. Although I would like to see games confront like actual.
There's a lot of bad stuff that happen. There's a lot of bad stuff when they do it. But it's just like, if you want to make a shooter, I almost say.
Oh, a shooter specifically.
Because I know a lot of people that won't play like war shooters.
No, that's fair.
They like the genre, but they're like, I'm not going to do that, and they'll stick to the whatever sci-fi shooters and stuff like that. So I take it your podcast is very political.
Actually, it's not. I am the more political person of the three of us. We all sort of specialize in different topics. I love talking about like sociology and psychology and politics in video games.
So you don't talk about politics on your podcast?
We do it sometimes. Like I said, we talk about unionization of like the gaming industry. So we do talk about those sort of topics. I tend to, at times, stray into the more heavy political end of that conversation because I think it's like, how can you not talk about that and not talk about the politics of it? But, of course, it's like we're not trying to make conclusive statements about where we think the industry is headed. At least that's what one of our guys is saying. Like, we don't want to really do that. We would more so like to talk strictly about, like, also have it sort of in the focus of games itself and not stray off into other zones of discussion. But ultimately, I mean, like, I'd love to talk more about politics on it. But
and it's also like I think it's honestly like an under.
Yeah. Oh, there's so many.
It's like an underrepresented thing in the in the norm, like bigger game press thing. Like I think a lot of people just avoid talking about stuff.
Oh
and
my
I
God,
have a lot of respect for Waypoint, because Waypoint will talk about anything and try and do deep dives.
I mean, you have a lot of. Oh, sorry.
There's probably a lot of independent podcasts that do that.
I was gonna say sorry. I was cutting you off there. Then I feel like you were.
Yeah. So I think there's definitely more room for that.
Oh, of course.
And the more of it, the better.
Most certainly, yeah. And I think if anything, I'd love to see like. What I hope that will happen with games as time goes on is see them begin to tackle serious, darker subject matters, And I think that does mean having to. I depend upon indie studios for that, because I was just where we just met. I was playing that one game where it was about handling a conflict between you and your partner, and it was all dialogue, but it was very interesting because it was like I was having as much fun fiddling with the mechanics of like what words I could use and what like phrase I could say in this conversation as I did like shooting, blowing someone's brains out in Battlefield 5, which I do like constantly.
I mean that is a weird part of games, is thinking of things as if they're fun from like a mechanical standpoint, which historically shooters have proven very fun.
They satisfy that part of our brain.
There's something about that satisfies it, and whether you're violent, depending on I'm probably never going to own a gun.
No, I don't think that it affects.
But I love shooters.
Yeah,
and I play them and enjoy them, and that is a weird part of games because it's like subject matter in most mediums are not like mechanical.
Oh, of course.
So it's kind of very cut and dry of like, I'm doing this dark subject matter, it's going to be dark, and you shouldn't really enjoy this unless like...
Well, that's, I think, the power of games is that they take what would have been you witnessing something. Like in a movie, I think the power of films is that they have so much that's just about you are a bystander to a situation. You're watching a horrible or a wonderful thing happening, and you're not really a part of it, but you can witness it. Whereas games, they sort of take that to the next level by, like, you are now interacting with this situation and this scenario. And I think there's so many avenues that can be explored with, in terms of like historical, like games covering historical events or, just contemporary problems and issues that can be done through that. But it's just a shame that I don't think there's enough of those mechanics don't exist in enough games where they look at real subject matter and try to have the player interact with it on a deeper level.
So given you're the political guy on the podcast, do you have a lot of other journalists or people in games that you kind of look to for inspiration about what to look into? Because I imagine you're probably looking at.
Yeah.
You probably follow a certain amount of people on Twitter. They're all talking about...
I'm not much of a Twitter bug, but I am trying to get more on board with it since I use Instagram and Facebook and Reddit a lot. That's kind of where I go on mostly. With journalists specifically, I think I don't really have any specific people that are attached or affiliated with like a news outlet. Yeah. I do watch a lot of YouTubers though, mostly because there's a lot that publish good video essays out there, and you'll find that there are those like Sean or HH Bomber Guy or what else is his name? He did a video about capitalism in the gaming industry. Can't remember. I think it's Jim something. He's British. Do you know who I'm referring to?
No.
Oh yeah. I forget I can't remember his name right now, but he does a lot of good videos. That from what I've seen, I haven't watched too much of his content, but I saw one of his videos, which is like about politics and games. It was really good. Extra Credits is also, I wouldn't consider really them like a journalist, although their channel covers various topics. Do you know Extra Credits?
Maybe journalist isn't the right word. I mean, we're out in the world of...
But journalists,
30 titles for people that are in press or content creation or whatever.
Yeah, because I don't really trust journalism always besides maybe some press articles, or not press, but like some, online outlets like, there's like Kotaku and they occasionally read some good stuff. I mean, they're like every gaming media news outlet. They have like they write their shitty articles, as everyone does. Sometimes, actually,
pay the bills for the good ones.
I don't want to say shitty. I don't want to say shitty articles. That's being too rude. But every outlet has a bad article every now and then.
And it's based on views, right? There's stuff people want to read about, and it might be silly. It might not be like the most positive thing, but
overall, I mean, like I mostly just watch YouTubers and I listen to video essays a lot of the time, and I listen to podcasts as well.
Yeah.
But there are definitely a lot of good people out there to get for like a deeper discussion of games and morality and the themes behind them. But,
and back to the Unite stuff. Where are you based?
Where am I based? Our podcast? Yeah. I don't know if I can answer that yet because
moving.
No. We're definitely in not going to move anytime soon. But last time the other guys that I worked with were like, oh, we don't really want to tell people where we're from yet, just because if you get doxxed or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Which I'm really not as nervous about it, honestly. I'll say we're based in we're based in New York. We're based in the East Coast.
Okay. So you have a game. So my question was going to be that there's probably a Game Workers Unite chapter in New York.
Yeah.
Have you gone? And
I've been meaning to look more into those, but I probably, now that you mention it, I will definitely.
Because I do think that there's a lot of people that are scared to go to those events because they might work at a place that is going to be anti-union, and I know some of them are done in secret. I know some of them don't have a meetup page because meetup lists everybody that's going to it. So I think there's a lot of room for press or journalists or people who do podcasts to go to those and kind of get the information and then maybe express it, because I think a lot of studios are not going and just thinking imagining what they're planning, and I think there would be a good use of people if the Game Workers Unite might want to keep it secret or something like that. I don't know their stance on journalists coming in and then writing this is what was talked about, but I think it's something that might be an interesting avenue and also give you probably a good angle on it or more content. So.
No, of course. And I think, I would love to go to one of those and join one of those as well. But you're completely right about people being afraid to go to them. I mean, one of the very things is I was looking at the GDC 2014 when I was in a survey, but it was just a presentation about an article they did about unionization in the gaming industry. So this is 5 years ago, and they said one of the biggest reasons, one of the reasons why a lot of people were too uncomfortable to confront, or not really confront, but go ahead and make a union, is because their bosses would or their managers would threaten them with being fired or low salary if they were to do something like that.
Yeah.
They're trying to keep people in place. They're using fear as a mechanic or as a way to hold people onto their jobs and onto what the current way their labor is being treated. So, if there was just more wide support for this kind of thing, if there was a wider community of people and that were backing developers in unionizing, I think, which hopefully will come more after the Red Dead Redemption 2 scandal that happened, and now that the Activision CEO, Activision, it was 800 employees were laid off, and now he's making how many millions a year, which is just absolutely absurd.
And I also think there's benefit to smaller developers. I think there's benefits to business owners of a union. I think there's benefits that they don't even know because they're just it's scary and I don't want to know. And I think if they had things out there and we're we're given this and that, and we're getting this, and weighing it, I think a lot of people will be on board.
But I also think it's good because there's a lot of problems in the industry that I don't know if unionization will necessarily completely fix, but I think can be attributed to the current way that the industry is being run. There's no union, there's very little regulation, and people complain every day. I'm in this Battlefield subreddit a lot, and there's currently people complaining about the content drop, saying there's not enough content being released, complaining about the state of the game having some bugs and glitches, and saying that's rushed and unfinished. But it's you can't fault the developers for that. The decision about when the game comes out or how quickly it comes out, that was up to the shareholders in EA. But yet you have people on Twitter and on the subreddit harassing and I guess you could sort of call it abusing the developers through taunts and insults and giving them shit for them in their game. And it's terrible because they're not the ones responsible for this. If you want better games, support the ability for developers to be able to negotiate on their own behalf without the risk of being fired or something. So they can basically give themselves more time to work on the games, so they can, they get paid more for what they're doing. They can cut down on crunch hours, which, if anything, I mean, if that's destroying the mental and emotional health of a person, why would you expect just because they're doing, more work under more time that their production's going to be better? It's like, no, they're tired, they're stressed out, they're not going to be performing or functioning any better as a result of that. So, it's just kind of like common sense to me that like a union should exist for devs to be more protected and to also have, a more say in what the development of their games are like.
Yeah, and I also think like regionally, I think some companies are big enough.
Yeah.
Like you look at like EA or Ubisoft, it's like they have enough people that they could even just have a union of their own company. Because other people do that. Other companies end up with unions and kind of all that stuff that are internal. And so they could even do that. There's also, I think, a lot of like there's a lot of stuff about the union that costs no money.
No, exactly.
You'd be like, well, if you're part of the union, you put like even like the credit stuff.
Yeah.
Like just standardizing that, and then being like, you're not. And then certain companies will not work with you or work with you if you're not within that thing. The users would have some idea if you're fairly crediting people. Like I think there's a lot of moving parts that could be benefits to to everybody and stuff like that.
Absolutely. I mean, overall, it would be better. It's just, these companies have no reason that they'd want to, because they're already making millions through like exploited labor. Why would they? At least the CEOs are. They wouldn't want to change that anytime soon because they don't feel like there's a reason to. It really relies on, I think, enough wide public support and, movement and dialogue within the game developers industry in order for something like that to happen. And obviously, because I think it is something that would have to be, a union is made and run by the workers, so obviously it would have to be something that is done by the devs. And I'm glad that, Red Dead Redemption 2 brought light to this. Of course, not glad that it happened. It was terrible that they were working that much, but it did expose the grimier underbelly of game development and how it's made. And
there's a bunch of that stuff where they were working on Red Dead Redemption 2. There's a lot of stories like that where they're working on a game you've never heard of.
Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of stuff. There's lots of bad stories that I think most people who've worked in the game industry would have either been a part of
it's part of the reason why I'm just not even mad about games being rushed anymore, because when it happens, I'm just like, well, there's a reason this is happening. Yeah. It has everything to do with the lack of regulation and, the lack of unionization in the industry. That's not the developer's fault. I'm not mad at them or anyone else for this. It's kind of just this game is a result of the circumstances in which it was made under. It's like, how am I going to because it's like people act like they can yell at developers or EA enough and things will change. And it's like, well, no, I don't think it will, but yeah.
Yeah, well,
I don't think they will as long as there's no actual change occurring in the way games are developed or produced or the way the workers making them are treated. But yeah, sorry.
I was going to say, well, thanks for being on the Question Bus.
Thank you. Absolutely. It was wonderful being here. If you guys want to hear more of me, or, if you want to hear my other two co-hosts, you can listen to the Landport. Currently we're on iTunes. We also have our own website.
Also, if you're on iTunes, you're on all the other platforms.
Yeah, exactly.
Except for Spotify. Are you on Spotify yet?
I think we're going to, or if we're not already. But we are going to, we have 3 episodes out right now. We're working on more. We're going to have a lot about GDC in our next upcoming one. And also, we're on Instagram and Twitter, so you can follow us there. And what's your podcast, by the way?
My podcast is called The Question Bus.
The Question Bus, that's right.
It's 99% me interviewing other game developers.
Awesome.
I'm slotting you in the journalist side, but I've interviewed podcasts. I've interviewed modders, I've interviewed a rapper, I've interviewed a person who draws portraits of rappers.
I gotta watch that.
I interview a variety of people, a variety of indie devs, producers, shipping companies. I just kind of meet people at shows and use my...
That's a cool format, seriously.
I'm here for other reasons, but then I have all this time where I can have interesting conversations and kind of meet new people. So, yeah, that's pretty much the pitch for the Question Bus. It can be found while you're listening to it. So, but theoretically, you find it on iTunes, Spotify, all that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
We got shirts. But yeah, thanks. Hope you have a good rest of your GDC.
Thank you. You as well. Thank you so much for having me on.